What's going on, friends? Today we will talk about web enumeration with a very popular tool used in penetration testing and ethical hacking. The tool name is Gobuster. This video is dedicated to fully explain the tool along with a practical scenario by going over the TryHackMe Gobuster the basics room. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started.
As always, when working with any tool, it's always recommended to start with the help menu. So we can do Gobuster -- help to figure out what are the available flags and the options to work with. The first thing, we have the available commands to use with Gobuster. We have the directory mode. This mode is used to enumerate web directories. Now, to enumerate subdomains, we use the DNS modes. All of these keywords or commands should be used after the Gobuster. So you write Gobuster, and then you write one of these commands depending on your objective. And lastly, we have the vhost, which is to enumerate virtual hosts. We will talk about virtual hosts later in this video. Now we talk about the flags. These are the flags that we can use to extend the functionality of Gobuster or to narrow it down to a specific objective or specific goal. For example, we have the -o or -- output. This is to send the output of the Gobuster command into a file for later analysis, or to analyze it, or maybe to upload it to the input as an input to a new tool. We have the, for example, -t -- threads. So in threads, the default number is 10. In threads, we increase or decrease the threads depending on the system resources. So if you've got a system with, let's say, that doesn't have so much resources or so many resources, you can just leave it as is, or maybe decrease it to be below than 10. If you've got a system with high resources, you can just increase it to increase the performance. Let's see here, we have, so the -w here. -w is for the word list. So the word list is very important when working with Gobuster. See, the word list here is a list containing keywords, maybe passwords, maybe subdomains, name of directories, common file names. So you supply the word list so that Gobuster uses this word list for the enumeration. Let's now start with the most common use of Gobuster, or the most commonly used command, which is the dir or directory. So we write Gobuster dir -- help. Let's have a look here. So these are the available flags, and the available flags can be used with this mode. So here we have this one, -c -- cookies. In -- cookies, we can configure a cookie. If we have got access to a cookie, or we're using Perf Suite along with Gobuster, we can supply cookies to Gobuster to use with each request. This is very important if you are enumerating a service or an application, and it requires you that you log in, right? So sometimes you need authorized access. So to achieve this, you may pass a cookie using the -c flag. And now we have this -x with lowercase x, here to supply or specify an extension. So basically, if we are scanning for files, if you want to detect hidden files in a web server, we can use -x, and we can specify the file extension that we're looking for. For example, we can specify PHP or JavaScript, and this will make Gobuster enumerate web directories and files as well, with the extensions specified using the -x. Okay, so we have -r to follow redirects, and we have the -h. We can also here supply an entire header to Gobuster, right? Specify h to be headers, -h header 1. You can specify more than one header as well. And these headers and the cookies, again, can be obtained by using the inspect tool on your browser, or by using Perf Suite when you are examining the requests. An important flag here is the -k. So -k for no TLS validation. This skips the process of checking the presence of SSL or TLS certificate. So basically, this is helpful when you want to when you are working with demo scenarios, right? Usually demo scenarios or CTF scenarios do not have the TLS certificate on the web servers. So basically, when you use -k, you tell Gobuster to skip this check, or do not check the presence of SSL certificates. Now, -p, for -p, you can supply a password. Again, similar to -c here, we can use -p when we want to work with authorized enumeration campaigns. So if you're enumerating a web server and you're required to log in, you can specify the password here. Let's see here. So -c status codes string. So in here, in -c, we can configure actually the status codes of the received responses. So since we are sending the requests to web servers, we should receive responses, right? HTTP responses. These responses come with status codes. So with -C, we can configure which status codes of the received responses we want to display. For example, here we can use -S and specify 200 to list only the responses from the web servers that include valid requests or valid responses. And -B works the opposite or the other way around of -C. Here we specify a blacklist of responses we don't want to see in the output. -U for, let's see, -B. Now this one specifying the URL of the target, straightforward. -U, -user agent, and -uppercase U for specifying the username. This one works simultaneously with the -uppercase P or -password we have talked about earlier. This one, when you want to specify authentication credentials. Okay, now it's time to deploy all of these flags into an actual example. So basically our example here is in this room. So we have, let's start the machine. Okay, so the first thing if you are doing this room is adding the IP address of the machine to the DNS settings, specifically this file. So we're going to just directly copy the command. And here we're going to uncomment this line and add the IP address. Okay, still not finished yet. We're going to need to edit the host file. Okay, so here we're going to have to add the IP address and map it to the domain specified in task 3. So in task 3, if you scroll down, or task 4, you see this domain name that is mentioned in task 2, offensivetools.thm. We're going to have to copy this and add it here. So for doing this, first add the IP address, and then we add the domain name. Now I should be able to ping the domain name. And now we're receiving responses from the domain name. All right, great. Now we're going to start the enumeration task. So before starting this task, we're going to answer some questions in task 2. So here I assign the IP address as this one is completed. Task 3. What flag do we use to specify the target URL? It's -U. Talked about this. What command do we use for the subdomain enumeration mode? It is the DNS. Now task 4, it is what we're going to do in this task. Okay, so in this task, we're going to deploy the flags we have talked about into one command. This command here will enumerate the directories of offensivetools.com. So we can start with go. We can just clear this, Gobuster, and here we're working with the dir mode. -U for specifying the URL. Our URL is offensivetools.thm. Now we have specified the URL. Next, we want to specify the word list. So basically, we're using user share word lists, and probably we're going to use the medium list. Okay, list 2.3. Looks like directory here is missing, and medium. All right. Let's see here. The server returns a status code that matches the provided options for non-existing URLs. Let's have a look. So it is offensivetools.thm, not .com. Okay, so far so forth. We have one directory /home. And again, guys, remember that you can filter these out or rule them out using the -S. The -S, as we said earlier, it actually allows you to specify which responses or which HTTP responses you want to see in this output. See, we have these directories /secret and /administrator. One of these answers the second question here. So which flag do we have to add to our command to skip the TLS verification? It is -no-TLS validation. And then we have enumerate the directories of offensive tools. Which directory catches your attention? It is the secret. Next question, continue enumerating the directory found in question 2, which is secret. You will find an interesting file there with a JavaScript extension. What is the file what is the flag found in this file. Okay, so we're going to stop this task. I'm going to start a new task here. This time we're going to specify the directory. So now we want to enumerate the /secret directory. And that is not all. We have to specify the files using -x.js. So JS, you can specify the Java that we are looking for JavaScript files. And we have discovered the file. So we're going to stop this and we use curl to display the contents of this file. /secret/flag.js. And now we can see the actual flag. So this answers the third question in task 4. Now it's time to talk about the subdomain enumeration. Remember Gobuster --help command we talked about earlier, and we saw that we have the available commands here. One of them is the DNS, which allows us to enumerate subdomains. All right, let's talk about this. So Gobuster DNS --help, and let's talk about the available flags here. So here, this is for -d, the domain string, specify the target domain, straightforward. And look at this one, -c, --show, -cname. Here we can show the cname records of the domain that we are enumerating. And here we have the -i, which allows us to show IP addresses that the domain and subdomains resolve to. And let's see, here we have, and we said that -d is a domain that we want to enumerate. And these global flags apply to Gobuster all in all. So basically, now let's have the same example, or the same domain we enumerated earlier. Let's now try to enumerate the subdomains. So Gobuster, and the mode here will be DNS -d, specify the domain, it is offensive, tools.thm -w, user share wordlists, and we're using cyclists, discovery, DNS, subdomain, that's what we have, subdomain, top 1 million, and maybe, let's see what we have here, 5,000. All right, so now we have supplied the required flags. Let's now start the enumeration. So we found no subdomains. Actually, this is not true. The actual domain here has subdomains, but for some reason, it doesn't show these subdomains at the time of doing this video today for February 2025. If you have done this room previously, prior to this date, or prior maybe to 25 days, you must have seen some subdomains or some output to this command. So what is the answer to task 5 then in this case? So let's see here. Apart from the DNS keyword and the -w flag, which shorthand flag is required for the command to work? It's -d. We have specified this here. And use the commands learned in this task. How many subdomains are configured for the offensive tools.thm? So the answer is 4. If you click on the hint, you see that it's asking you to use the the word list that we have specified here. Despite this, it doesn't show any subdomains. Maybe we can raise this to TryHackMe's support team so that they look into it. All right, now we're gonna move on to virtual host enumeration. Let's clear this and start with Gobuster vhost --help. Okay, I always make typos in the tool's name, so we're gonna fix this. Buster. Okay. All right, let's have a look here at the flags. So the first one is --append -domain. Basically, this one works in conjunction with another flag here. Let me show you what it is. It is the -domain. Let's see if it is available here. --domain, this one. So --domain and --append -domain, they work in conjunction. So basically, when we specify --domain here, we are telling Gobuster what is the domain name that will be that will have an entry from the word list added to it to form a valid host name. So domain to append when using an IP address as a URL. So if you're using an IP address as a URL, or IP address in the URL, and then you specified a domain, what happens here, you are appending a domain to each word list entry to form a valid host name. So what does that mean? Basically, remember that virtual hosts are actual websites that are hosted on the same server. All right, let's have an example. See, here we have the IP address shown here in the room. This IP address has a web server, or could have multiple web servers hosted, right, on the same machine. Now, when we see an IP address here, this means that the IP address could be mapped to several domain names at the same time. So these are called virtual hosts. So when we enumerate the IP address using Gobuster and using the virtual host, we are telling Gobuster to find out what are the websites found under this IP address. It could be one or could be multiple. And this actually is the same the concept of shared hosting. When we sign up for shared hosting and you get an IP address, this IP address could be used simultaneously with other customers or other accounts on the same web server, because all their websites or all of these websites could be hosted on the same web server. So one IP address doesn't mean only one domain. It could be several domains or several subdomains and several websites. That's what we're doing here with virtual hosts. We are actually trying to find out if the domain name or if the IP address here or the web server has multiple websites hosted, right? So we use the virtual host. So when we specify dash domain and dash append domain, here we're telling Gobuster what is the domain name that could have subdomains or multiple virtual hosts with it. It's not compulsory to supply the dash domain string. Only when you have a domain name you want to enumerate, right, closely. If you want to do that on the scope of the URL, you can just supply only the URL and let Gobuster find the virtual hosts. That if you don't have a domain name in your mind, right? So if you have a domain in mind, you can just supply it with dash domain, and don't forget to add this as well. Okay, let's see here. Dash C for the cookies, we talked about this. Dash M. Dash M is to specify the HTTP method to use for the request. You can specify GET, and you can also specify maybe POST requests. This one for the password, this one for the URL, user agent, username. Looks like this is it. Oh, we have this one, dash exclude length. So here we excludes results based on the length of the response. It's useful when you are, you can just use this when you are working with Burp Suite maybe. You have an idea on what are the actual lengths of the responses. And we have the dash R to follow the redirects. Let's have an actual example here. So we clear, and now let's enumerate the virtual hosts that could be found on this domain. So Gobuster, and we specify vhost -u. Let's specify the machine's IP address. And then dash domain, offensive tools, thm, -w. We're going to use the same word list we used earlier when we enumerated the subdomains. List, discovery, DNS, and then subdomains, .1,000,000, 5,000. And don't forget the dash append dash domain. Looks like we have many subdomains. Let's see here, but some of them are with status code 404 not found. So let's exclude these from the output. Maybe you can use dash s 404. Or you can use the exclude length. Here we have, as you can see, the length is 283 bytes for the status code 404. So we can use exclude length. So here we have 283. Now 288. All right, let's do this. Let's put a range here. So we exclude all the responses with the length, with a range of length. Maybe it starts with 250 and ends with maybe 350. All right. So see, now we have these subdomains: forum, store, and we have two, as you can see, one with lowercase w and other with uppercase w, and then we have secret. So in total, we have actually, we're gonna just omit this because lowercase and uppercase, it doesn't matter. So these are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 virtual hosts. Now let's try and remove the domain here. If you remove the domain, Gobuster will only use the URL and will append each entry from the word list to the URL to discover the virtual hosts. See, haven't found anything. So sometimes you have to supply the domain name. So in total we have 4 virtual hosts. Let's have a look here at the task. Use the commands, learn this task to answer the following question. How many virtual hosts on the offensive tools domain reply with the status code 200? Status code 200 we said we have 4. Don't account for these 2. These are only 1, so 4. Okay, so that was it. We have just learned how to use Gobuster to enumerate directories, files, virtual hosts, and of course subdomains. And that's the concept of Gobuster. You can use it a lot during your penetration testing engagements or even in your CTF scenarios. So that was it.